Hey, it's the Magnificent One, and today we are talking about covers. What goes into a cover? How do we design them? And what makes a good cover and what makes a bad cover? So, here's a couple of different ones I've done. Some of them are from DC. Actually, I take that back. One of them is from DC, and the rest of them are Marvel covers. But I want to talk to you about what I felt went well with these, and some of the ones which I kind of think, like this one, didn't come out well at all. So a good cover has a couple of things, right? It's obviously there to draw the reader in, make it attractive, make you want to buy that particular comic book. It can do. It's also got to be something that's not boring, right? It's got to be something that shows action for the most part, unless there is some sort of event. A few other things. General advice always says that more readers will prefer a cover where they're making eye contact with the person, and you'll see I somewhat did that in a couple of these, but I probably overall failed in doing that because I went for the more dramatic shots. So I did fail in those. And then the other thing is they should be asymmetrical because the human eye does not like perfect symmetry. So had a bit of a hit and miss in there as well. So here are six covers I've done. Now some of these I think came out good. Some of them I think were not good. Right. So especially the Star Wars one and then the new X-Men one I think were borderline terrible. But let's go over a couple of them. Probably the best one that I've done out of these anyhow is this. This is a Thor cover. It's real simple design. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It shows the character. It shows them in a dynamic pose. A couple of reasons why I decided to do it this way is I knew it was going to be all black and white. So I did not want to put a lot of stuff in the background because when things are black and white and you put a lot of detail, it becomes messy. So you have to have things stand out and you have to have a lot of contrast. So you'll see a contrast here between the top layer of his cloak, the bottom layer of the cloak, and then also the clothes, right? Same with the arms, same with the eyes, everything kind of pops out. So you want to make things pop on the cover. So that's the key. Why I like this pose, this is a homage to the Man with No Name series. So there's this famous pose of Clint Eastwood. I think it's for A Fistful of Dollars, but it was one of those three movies. There's a great trilogy called Man with No Name. I think that's what it is. Where which is Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Good, Bad, Ugly. Best trilogy ever, bar none. Go check it out. But uh, I like that pose that he had. That kind of leaning, kind of half on one leg. In that case, his arm was down there, kind of ready to take action. This is the same thing, relaxed but poised to beat somebody's ass with that big ass hammer he's got. I also like the long handle hammer. I think if Thor was a god beating people up with a hammer, he'd use a sledgehammer, not a shortened sledgehammer. So I also try and draw it that way. And I like this pose. I've seen this a couple of times in movie posters where the hero has this broadsword kind of hung out over his shoulders. Have not seen that a lot in comics. Maybe the old Conan series had some of those, but I like that pose, and I think that's what we should. That's should be used more often, basically, right? So that's pretty cool. That's the Thor cover. So let's talk about a couple ones I didn't like and what went wrong with this. So this is the all new X Men. It's got Gambit. He is probably my favorite X Men. So always trying to incorporate him whenever possible. So in this series, this was kind of the talked about the original X Men in a different light and how they would look like. But what this does is it's boring because it's over symmetrical. So I mean by that, if you look at this just from a standpoint of total image design, it's very, very boring. Some things work well. The foreshortening I think is kind of cool with the hands. However, I think I failed with, especially in this card. This card looks like it's at the same, like it's behind his hand instead of in front of it. And the lines, I think, were meant to create action, but it made it look worse. I think it made it look too designish, too boring that way. So, I mean, some people like it. I find it this was just a little bit boring. So something to keep in mind whenever you do a cover or make kind of design, you want to have like an L-shaped type design where things fall on this side. You also don't want it to be completely symmetrical. There's kind of the rule of threes where things should be done kind of one third this way, and then 1/3 this way. So anything dynamic should be hair, hair, and hair. Whereas my center focus is kind of halfway down through the page, right around here and in the middle. So there is something, if you're ever interested, called the rule of threes when it comes to design, and I completely screwed that up. So because of that, I end up with this boring ass cover. Well, the other cover I really, really did not like was this one. This is the Star Wars Shattered Empire cover. So I did this before the season finale of The Mandalorian, so I didn't know what was going on. But I thought it would be kind of neat to have Baby Yoda in there, have the Mandalorian in there, and then have the bad guy with the dark saber, and I forget the guy's name, but have that all in there. Because I knew at some point it seemed there would be a showdown of sorts where this guy was protecting this little guy against this bad guy. And he had recently gotten a spare out of metal. And so I thought it would be kind of neat. But the concept that was in my head did not really come out in paper for a couple of reasons. One, I really want to silhouette this blaster, but if you look at it, the actual shape of the blaster, this matches it, but it looks very cartoony because the way it's designed, it's looks better in real life because it's got multiple layers and multiple dimensions, something I always talk about. But when you kind of silhouette it out, it doesn't work really well. The shadows also didn't come off as well as I thought they would, and it makes things kind of blur in the background. And then with this whole area, you can't really tell what's going on unless you really look at it. The Baby Yoda too, I would have probably taken out some of the lines in his face if I had to do this over again because he's supposed to be a cute guy, and generally things which are cute are when it comes to black and white art anyhow. You gotta remember this is no color. Black and white art, you wanna have less minor details because it'll look cuter if you have bigger, broader features without the little scratchy details inside of there. So I would have done that differently. Otherwise, I mean, it's not too bad. Does have some layering in there. Like I said, that's important. Again, I did a little better job being off center and kind of pitting rules in thirds. But what happens is there's too many points of interest. You know, there's no main focus. I think ideally I wanted the main focus to be this guy. But if you really think about it, what pops out? It's kind of pops out. But because there's so much stuff going on over here and this guy's standing by himself, well, you pay attention to the little guy, right? And then maybe if your eye might be trying to look to see what he's looking at, then you'll come back over here. But it's just not a great concept as far as how it was designed. So let's do a couple other ones. So these are basically just homages. What is homage? Do you pay homage or do you have an homage? That's a good question. I got to figure that out. Todd McFarlane, right? So this is Harley Quinn, and I just liked doing a reference to the famous Todd McFarlane cover where he has his cloak and he's protecting a woman and protecting her from, I guess, evil. But just swapping out with Harley Quinn. Nothing too exciting about this. In a way, this is homage covers are lazy. I mean, but people like them, you know. So did this. I think it's a decent cover, but nothing too fancy. It's basically just me drawing Harley Quinn on the background of a picture Todd McFarlane came up with years ago. And it's got bats. Bats are awesome. Same thing with this one. This is the homage to the famous Spider-Man cover. However, what I liked about this is I changed it a little bit. Wolverine's not as flexible and malleable as Spider-Man is, so it doesn't look quite as dramatic. But I like the Wolverine because he's got that body hair, which is something that is an interesting choice. They kind of made him a shorter man covered in body hair. If you ever think of your heroes as idealized versions of people, just remember there's also Wolverine, who's a short alcoholic covered in body hair. Take that as you may. In any case, what's cool about that is you can really do the shadows using body hair. You can make things pop using body hair because it's basically just a different means of shading. And you can do that with ink and it doesn't look funky. See, if you just cross-hatch this throughout the entire body, it would just be too much. It would just look terrible. But because it's body hair and you can go in all different directions and you accept it as body hair, you can make the veins pop. They come out over the layers. You can make it look like it's three-dimensional. And you can make these cool little shadows that really make this stuff pop. So it's kind of cool. Added some claws, ha ha, because you know there's never a decent Wolverine picture without Wolverine slashes. That's a fact. I always think it's interesting because I try and decide what kind of claws I want to give Wolverine every time. He's got so many variations. The coolest ones were the bone claws when Adam Kubert was drawing him under the Larry Hama Adam Kubert run from Wolverine 75 to like, I think he drew like up until 104, issue 102 or something. I'd have to check. But gave him the straight metal claws, but you can also do curved claws. You can also see how this is flat. I know some people draw them like as if they were a cone. So if he was to punch into a wall, you'd see 3 holes. Whereas with these claws, if he was punching a wall, you'd see like 3 slashes, right? So decisions. I actually did like doing a little bit of hashing. Yeah, it's not cross hashing because there's no cross. It's just hashing. And hatching, that's what it is, boys and girls. Hatching, not hashing. Hashing is something you eat with eggs in the morning for breakfast. Hatching is a shading technique you use when you draw an ink cover. Education. So anyhow, I also did a little Wolverine picture. I did that because in the McFarlane original cover, he did a Spider-Man cover like this, like a simplified version of Spider-Man's face. I did the same thing here. Also used white ink to go over the slogan. Yeah, so that was kind of cool, right? So there you go. That's the Hunt for Wolverine cover. And then the cover that, I think this was a good cover. One of the things with this, it does a couple of things, right? It's multiple layered. It has foreshortening. It draws the eye up along a plane into the main characteristics. If you were to divide this by thirds, the head is roughly 1/3 from the top. Yeah, maybe a little more than that. Yeah, I'd say about 1/3 from the top. And then roughly 1/3 from the sides. That's where you want to have the main focus. And it also has a big ass line of web fluid, which, man, web fluid, just a term, kind of sounds disgusting. Web fluid, that's a whole different story. Anyhow, it draws you back to the main character. And layers, man, you got to do layers. When you have layers, you got to do, here's layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, layer 6. I talked about that in another video, the importance of having layers to make things more dynamic. Basically, pitting things multi-layered, the more layers you have, the more interesting it is to the human eye. One thing I could have done with this is maybe put something in this space, but I would debate that because I actually like how this came out. I don't know if I would want to have a lot of stuff in there. And again, it's black and white art, so because I knew it was going to be a black and white story, not a lot in the background because otherwise it gets blurred. So that's what it is. Put a little spider in there because I also have this thing like, this is stupid, but wouldn't it be ironic if Spider-Man was web crawling and he stepped in a spider? Man, that would be cool. Ha ha ha. No, but yeah, I think you have to have a spider in every Spider-Man picture, right? It makes sense. Yes, no, maybe. Who knows? Anyhow, that's my thoughts on covers. A couple of covers I've done, just 6 of them that I've done here recently. Let me get, as you were, let me know what you guys think about my stuff. If you like it, if you hate it, and also what should go into a good cover. I am very curious to what your thoughts will be. Well, until next time.